All right, Jay Baba, everyone. So last week we read from the pamphlet Meher Baba's Call, and the second part of that pamphlet is entitled Existence is Substance and Life is Shadow. That material also appears in the supplement of God Speaks, which is what we have on the screen here, although it's with some additions to it, primarily what's in the beginning, where there's the subject of spiritual paradox. So we're going to start there and then go ahead and read through it. So this is all in quotes because this is something that Baba has dictated. So, Big Mama, would you like to begin reading? Wait, I think you're on mute.
It's Mama Bear. Yeah, I am big too.
Oh, Mama Bear. I don't know, why did I get Big Mama? I'm sorry. That's a movie. That was a movie my daughter played a little part of.
That's okay.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
Baba's
saying the
joke
wrong
on
things all
me.
the time these days.
Sure, I'll read.
Yeah, so if you want to read to the end of the page here.
All right. Spiritual paradox.
Yeah.
Unless and until ignorance is removed and knowledge is gained, the knowledge whereby the divine life is experienced and lived, everything pertaining to the spiritual seems paradoxical. God, whom we do not see, we say is real, and the world which we do see, we say is unreal. In experience, what exists for us does not really exist, and what does not exist for us really exists. We must lose ourselves in order to find ourselves. Thus, loss itself is gain. We must die to self to live in God. Thus, death means life. We must become completely void inside to be completely possessed by God. Thus, complete emptiness means absolute fullness. We must become naked of selfhood by being nothing, so as to be absorbed in the infinity of God. Thus, nothing means everything.
I'll just break there for a second and just say, that's the first section. And then the second section here is where the pamphlet that was printed in 58 by Audi would begin. And that would be after Mayor Baba's Call. And maybe I'll just make a comment in this one section here that when I first started reading the discourses after I first heard of Baba, these were things that were very intriguing to me. That, what we think is real is not real. And what we say is unreal is the true reality. And for myself, that was something, one of the things that initially drew me to Baba. Hey, Jack. Okay, so why don't we now start into the next section unless someone wants to make a comment.
Can you finish that sentence, Richard? Rich?
I'm sorry, what, Marge?
Can you finish that sentence you were just saying? Just say it again, the last sentence you just said.
Oh, what Baba says here was very intriguing to me. And he more says something in similar ways in the discourses, is that what we say is real, even though, so what God, who we do not see, we say is unreal, and the world which we do see, which is really unreal, we believe that to be real. So we take which is unreal to be real, and what is real we take to be false.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Shall I continue?
Yeah.
Existence is substance and life is shadow. Existence is eternal, whereas life is perishable. Comparatively, existing is what his body is to man, and existence is what his body is to man, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And life is as the cloth that covers the body. The same body changes clothes according to the season, time, and circumstances, just as the one and eternal existence is always there throughout the countless and varied aspects of life. Shrouded beyond recognition by the cloak of life, with its multifarious folds and colors, is existence unchangeable. It is the garb of life with its veils of mind, energy, and gross forms that shadows and superimposes on existence, presenting the eternal, indivisible, and unchangeable existence as transient, varied, and ever-changing.
Okay. Ben, would you like to read?
Okay. Existence is all pervading and is the underlying essence of all things. Whether animate or inanimate, real or unreal, varied in species or uniform in forms, collective or individual, abstract or substantial. In the eternity of existence, there is no time. There is no past and no future, only the everlasting present. In eternity, nothing has ever happened and nothing will ever happen. Everything is happening in the unending now. Existence is God, whereas life is illusion. Existence is reality, whereas life is imagination. Existence is everlasting, whereas life is ephemeral. Existence is unchangeable, whereas life is ever-changing. Existence is freedom, whereas life is a binding. Existence is indivisible, whereas life is multiple. Existence is imperceptible, whereas life is deceptive. Existence is independent, whereas life is dependent upon mind, energy, and gross forms. Existence is, whereas life appears to be. Existence, therefore, is not life. Birth and death do not mark the beginning or end of life, whereas the numerous stages and states of life which constitute the so-called births and deaths are governed by the laws of evolution and reincarnation. Life comes into being only once, with the advent of the first dim rays of limited consciousness, and succumbs to death only once on attaining the unlimited consciousness of infinite existence. Existence, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present God, is beyond cause and effect, beyond time and space, beyond all actions. Existence touches all things and all shadows. Nothing can ever touch existence. Even the very fact of its being does not touch existence. To realize existence, life must be shed. It is life that endows limitations to the unlimited self. Life of the limited self is sustained by the mind creating impressions, by energy supplying the impetus to accumulate and dissipate these impressions through expressions, and by gross forms and bodies functioning as the instruments through which these impressions are spent, reinforced, and eventually exhausted through actions.
Okay. Jack, are you there? Like to read?
Oh, we lost him.
There we go. I'm here.
Okay, great.
Life is thickly linked with actions. Life is lived through actions. Life is valued through actions. Life's survival depends on actions. Life cognizant is actions, actions opposite in nature, actions affirmative and negative, actions constructive and destructive. Therefore, to let life succumb to its ultimate death is to let all actions end. When actions end completely, life of the limited self spontaneously experiences itself as existence of the unlimited self. Existence being realized, evolution and involution of consciousness is complete. Illusion vanishes, and the law of reincarnation no longer binds. Simply to desist from committing actions will never put an end to actions. It would merely mean putting into action yet another action, that of inactivity. To escape from actions is not the remedy for the uprooting of actions. Rather, this would give scope to the limited self to get more involved in the very act of escaping, thus creating more actions. Actions, both good and bad, are like knots in the tangled thread of life. The more persistent the efforts to undo the knots of action, the firmer become the knots and the greater the entanglement. You know, I'm just remembering when I read when Baba was Buddha. He said, "I gain nothing from supreme enlightenment, and for that reason, it's called supreme enlightenment." And all this means to me, in this regard of what we're reading, is that we have to go through what we have to go through, seemingly in the attempt of gaining that enlightenment. And I kind of hesitate at the word gain.
Mm-hmm.
I think to me it's the awareness of it and the experience of it that will set me free.
Richard, is the supplement also given by Baba?
Parts of it are, so this part definitely is, because it says
Okay.
Maker Baba says, and it's in quotes.
Yeah.
There are parts that Ghani wrote and were
Mhm.
included. So it's a little bit of a mixture.
Thanks.
Mhm. Okay, Jack, do you want to continue to the end of this page?
Only actions can nullify actions, in the same way that poison can counteract the effects of poison. A deeply embedded thorn may be extricated by the use of another thorn or any sharp object resembling it, such as a needle, used with skill and precaution. Similarly, actions are totally uprooted by other actions when they are committed by some activating agent other than the self. Karma yoga, Dhyana yoga, Raj yoga, and Bhakti yoga serve the purpose of being prominent signposts on the path of truth, directing the seeker towards the goal of eternal existence. But the hold of life, fed by actions, is so tight on the aspirant that even with the help of these inspiring signposts, he fails to be guided in the right direction. As long as the self is bound by actions, The aspirant, or even the pilgrim on the path toward truth, is sure to go astray through self-deception. Throughout all ages, sadhus and seekers, sages and saints, munis and monks, tapasabis and sannyasis, yogis, sufis, and talibs, keep going,
It's quite a list.
have struggled during their lifetimes, undergoing untold hardships in their efforts to extricate themselves from a maze of actions and to realize the eternal existence by overcoming life.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
Sure.
Marge, would you like to read?
Okay, but can you enlarge it? It's hard for me to see the little print.
Okay, let me see if this works.
It's great.
Is that
Right.
better? Okay.
Oh, so much better.
I should have done that earlier. Okay.
Can you lower it?
I'm sorry.
Can you lower it? It's cut off by my ribbon at the top.
Oh, let's see here. Is that better like that?
No, lower it, not to make it small,
Here.
but lower it.
That's
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
They fail in their attempts.
Whoops, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hold on one second here. Okay, there we go. Whoops, that's not good.
There.
There we go.
Is that good? Got to lower it again?
Oh,
And make it bigger. Okay, they fail in their attempts because the more they struggle. Jack, you want to mute yours?
Oh, sorry.
No, that muted Marge. Marge, you're muted now.
All these buttons. They fail in their attempts because the more they struggle with their selves, the firmer the selves become gripped by life through actions intensified by austerities and penances, by seclusions and pilgrimages, by meditation and concentration, by assertive utterances and silent contemplation, by intense activity and inactivity, by silence and verbosity, by japas and tapas, and by all types of yogas and chillas. Emancipation from the grip of life and freedom from the labyrinths of actions are made possible for all and attained by a few when a perfect master, Sadguru or Kutub, is approached and his grace and guidance are invoked. The perfect master's invariable counsel is complete surrender to him. Those few who do surrender their all, mind, body, possessions, so that with their complete surrender, they also surrender consciously their own selves to the perfect master, will have their very being left conscious to commit actions which are now activated only by the dictates of the master. Such actions after the surrender of one's self are no longer one's own actions. Therefore, these actions are capable of uprooting all other actions which feed and sustain life. Life then becomes gradually lifeless and eventually succumbs by the grace of the perfect master to its final death. Life which once debarred the persevering aspirant from realizing perpetual existence can now no longer work its own deception. I have emphasized in the past, I tell you now, and I shall age after age forevermore, repeat that you shed your cloak of life and realize existence, which is eternally yours. To realize this truth of unchangeable, indivisible, all-pervading existence, the simplest way is to surrender to me completely, so completely that you are not even conscious of your surrender, conscious only to obey me and to act as and when I order you. If you seek to live perpetually, then crave for the death of your deceptive self at the hands of complete surrender to me. This yoga is the essence of all yogas in one.
Okay. That completes
Sounds easy.
this discourse.
Yeah.
And
It's amazing to me that all these spiritual practices are making the journey even harder, according to this. Meditation, concentration, pilgrimages, silence, japas, all these activities that are traditionally viewed as helping a pilgrim. The firmer the selves become gripped by life through actions, intensified by austerities and penances. Don't you guys find that amazing?
Well, it's a carryover from Buddha because, as Baba said, that was his biggest mistake. He only went as far as nirvana and didn't tell his followers that they are God becoming, basically. So they got, when he passed, and then things start getting to a point where a quote religion was formed, it included all of this stuff to the point where it's going to go nowhere. And it hasn't gone anywhere.
Well, gee, it makes me wonder where these things came from. Who instituted these paths and these yogas if they didn't originate from the master and his perfect masters and whatever, I'm just proposing. I'm not suggesting we know the answer.
Well, in other places, Baba speaks to religion in general and the different paths, and I think there it's a little less severe, but he does say his treatment's a little less severe. He does say that following anything can one's ego can attach to it, and so whoops, sorry about that.
We know who that is.
Is that Baba calling?
Yeah. And, so it's the ego's attachment to it, and so in other places Baba actually says it's better to do these things and these so-called religious and spiritual practices than, let's say, other things which will get you just bound even more to the world. The problem is when one places their ego into all these things, and then that prevents further advancement. Here he's being more severe in saying that they really severely bind.
Well, weren't they meant as baby steps or nursery school, kindergarten? And then as the avatars come, they teach us more and what we can release. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. And, these practices can increase one's longing for truth and for God.
Yeah.
Yeah, the great thing about Bob's manifestation is, as he said, this is the end of a tremendous cycle. Thousands upon thousands of inner cycles within this great cycle is happening right now. And we are so fortunate to be part of
It's 4:30.
It pains me that most people don't get it. But then again, I said, well, it's, not to be condescending in any way, shape, or fashion. It just isn't their time until he performs or manifests in a sense to them, each of them, to help everybody. I don't know.
Right.
As I'm looking at this, I'm thinking what a wonderful method Baba provided of the provisional ego.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that provisional ego is the way through this to get closer to our goal of Baba within.
I
Yeah.
wholeheartedly agree.
Yes.
Very hard to keep in mind all the time.
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
it enough just to say it in the morning and kind of remind yourself before going to bed? Or do we have to remember all day long?
Well, I think, I say Baba's name in morning and the night. And in between, yes, but I don't focus in the sense of telling myself to say Baba's name all day long. I know I can't. It's a, that's not it's not an impossible task, but for me, it's an improbable task.
Actually, I don't know if it's repeating Baba's name as much as saying and feeling and knowing that it is him doing everything as you're going about your day.
Well, I give that as a given going in. That's very simple for me to do that because I know it's a given going in. That my conviction is such that it has to be a given going in. Otherwise, I'd be a hypocrite, which I probably am anyway. I can't escape myself. I need him to pull me through the abyss, so to speak. And the abyss is not being there. That to me is the nature of the abyss. It's just not there for me at this particular present moment that I'm in existence.
I would find it easy to do the provisional ego if I didn't care about myself so much. But there seems to be a conflict between me and that total surrender.
Of course, we live in a paradox.
Yes.
So it's the acceptance of who I am at the moment I am is about the furthest I can take it. And I don't think there is anything further than that.
And for me, it's a memory problem, remembering to remember him every moment.
Mm. Hmm. Well, Lynn, I'm glad you mentioned this provisional ego because it's one of a couple of things that we actually touched upon in previous meetings. One of them is way back in the beginning, which I'll flip back here, where, let's see here.
Spiritual paradox.
Yeah, let's see. Where Baba says, maybe it's in Life is Shattered in this section here. There we go. Right in this section here. Oops. Where Baba says, existence is reality, whereas life is imagination. And so imagination was the topic of one of these discussion groups. And so again, Baba refers to that here. Another topic was, as I mentioned, the provisional ego, and also the notion of existence. Baba, it's interesting here that Baba is not referring to the ultimate reality now as God exclusively. He does say in this line above, whoops, existence is God. But this whole section is basically referring to the ultimate reality in terms of existence. And it's interesting. So, he'll speak of this ultimate reality in different ways. In God Speaks, it's the everything. In infinite intelligence, it's infinite intelligence. Of course, it's God. And Baba also describes it as infinite love. And so there are many ways and names that Baba used to describe what we refer to as God. And in this section, he's using the term existence. And, I find that interesting, and I'm wondering if anyone else has a comment they'd like to make on it.
To me, God is divine energy. like electricity. You can't see it, you feel it. And as Bob also said, illusion sustains reality. That they both exist in tandem.
I don't know if we can feel it. I think if we really felt God as God is, we would be God.
I didn't say you couldn't. No, I said, yeah. I just use that metaphor. That.
I'm just teasing you, Jack.
Oh, I don't.
We're bantering.
You're, you're tickling my.
Well, I think both of you have good points.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. I mean, I I have really got to a point where uh, the idea of existing eternally uh, as God without illusion uh, reminds me of Yogi Berra, the great catcher for the New York Yankees, who said, "If everything was perfect, we wouldn't be."
Right.
So it's that kind of paradox.
Well, what Baba was mysteriously withholding from us is what happens afterwards. What is this existence beyond the limitations of space, time, matter, mind, energy? So I guess we just have to wait and find out.
And then
Well-
you can write the book, Fershte, and
Isn't it reflected in the Master's Prayer
let us know.
of omniscience and omnipresence and bliss and infinite knowledge? To me, that's God, and that's where we're all headed eventually.
Yeah, the divine energy is powerful. Infinite power. But that says power is the word power also means ability.
Yeah, and
To
of course,
you,
Baba describes God as being infinite power, infinite knowledge, and infinite bliss,
yeah,
and infinite love,
yeah,
all the good things that we be seeking.
everything in the Master's Prayer.
No beginning and no end.
Well, yes, that's nice to hear.
Mhm.
But you know, we can only perceive in terms of what our mind can concoct about these words.
Oh, for
We have no idea what infinite power it looks like.
it doesn't, it doesn't have. It doesn't have.
I don't even want to fathom it, because if put my mind to fathom it, it wants to like go on tilt.
One of the things I think is true is that you're right. We cannot fathom it, but what we could see to some, although we didn't meet Baba himself, we know of his life and we met his mandali, so we see what God in human form is, and so that gives us a taste of what that state is,
Yeah.
because he was experiencing it and he is the manifestation of it.
And the incredible thing is, these words had never been written before by anyone.
Yeah.
And just to read them, the truth of their existence in the English language, or whatever language is translated into. Even then, I would hesitate to go to another language other than English, since he wrote it all in English. Is amazing. Where
What you say about these words have never been written before, and I was thinking, last week I think we were talking about last session, we were talking about how well, you mentioned, Jack, there's so few people that follow Baba, And I think one of the things is that, what Baba is describing here is an ultimate state that many people may find disturbing
Very, very, very disturbing.
or fearful. Life isn't real. uh, what is real you don't see. Life is just imagination. You have to die in order to discover God. All these things are quite, I think, a hurdle for people to accept.
Yeah, that's why I hesitate to proselytize. I mean, it's
It's not
point.
profitable, right?
Yeah, it's pointless. I mean, and to say Baba's name is enough, as you said. Just say my name. I'll take care of the rest.
There's a story Jeff says. Hi, Jeff. You're muted. About some story, Jeff, you probably have to remind me, but something about there is still time, turn around and run as fast as you can.
Oh, yeah, I mean about Margaret Krask.
Yeah.
There was yeah, Margaret used to sit outside Kitty's office in the sun, and this new young lady came up to see Kitty, but she kind of bounded up the steps there, and Margaret said very pointedly, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm so and so. I'm new to Baba." "Good, you still have a chance to escape." That was Margaret Krask.
Love that story. Oh.
But the funny thing about Margaret is that in 72, I found out her address when I was still living. I was living in Arizona at the time, but I was visiting my mom in Queens, and I got her address from Adele, whose address I got from Alan Cohen. And I went up to see her, and I think she was living in the Soho. And all the memory I have is this door to her apartment, which was painted white, and the lintel and the side wood was painted blue, and it didn't have a bell. I just knocked, and I she opened the door, and she was looking as Margaret looks, and she said the same thing. She said, "Who are you?" And I said, I got your address from Adele Walken. And she looked at me and she said, "So what?" And I didn't know what I just stood there. Well, she just closed the door.
You were not invited in?
No.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's and so I thought about it, and I realized she knew I was Irish, and she was English, and that whole thing came up at that moment. That's how I felt about it.
Didn't that turn you off?
No, it disturbed me only to the point where I had to figure out something to let's say apologize to myself for that what I considered rudeness, but it was teaching me something that I still haven't figured out. But the only thing that satisfied me was realizing the Irish don't like the English, and the English don't like the Irish, and that must have been pretty much where she was at that particular time. Then I saw her again when she moved to Myrtle Beach, and she was in the house across the street from Richie, down the road there on Patterson Drive.
Happy House.
Yeah, Happy House, and she was sitting all by herself, and I walked up to her, and she just looked at me, didn't recognize me, and I just kind of stood there, and nothing was really said, and I left, and it turned out that she died a couple of months later, and then the house got hit by a lightning bolt and burned down. How long after, Richie, you would know that? after her passing, the house get hit by
I
lightning?
don't know, maybe Jeff knows. I think a couple of years, but I can't say for sure. I think the fire was like in 94, if I'm not mistaken. And I forget the year she passed away.
You know, not to denigrate Margaret. Good Lord, I mean,
Yeah. I think Margaret passed away before Kitty.
uh,
Kitty was 90, if I remember right, Jeff. And Kitty passed away in 91, 92.
Yeah, something like that.
yeah,
I get those all the years all mixed up.
yeah,
Horrible.
her abruptness could be off-putting. Let's put it that way. I mean, that's who she was, and that's fine.
Yeah. She also had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
And you know, she, particularly with Baba, she and Baba seemed to share a great sense of humor.
Yeah. You might have heard this, but I don't know if this is off the subject of what you guys are talking about, but you know,
We're only talking about God.
yeah. When Margaret was staying at a Happy House, you know, some of us would spend the evenings with her. The women would take the night shift, and some of us guys would be there from like, I guess, from 6 till 10. And one of the people that did this was David Silverman. And so one evening he was there with her, sitting at the table there, I think in the back of that screen porch. And, you know, he says to her kind of very in his feeling sort of way, Margaret, you know, and he's about 45 and she's 96. And he says to her, Margaret, you know, I've always wanted someone to share my life with, you know, like a soulmate, you know, and years go by and I've never found anybody that, you know, that where it worked out and everything. And then he looks over at her kind of seriously and says, Margaret, you know, if you were younger, I would have asked for your hand. Margaret says, I'm sorry, David, but I had in mind a much younger man. She's 96. Sorry, David, but I had in mind a much younger man.
Much prefer her humor.
Did David laugh?
Oh, yeah, he got a kick out of that.
That's funny.
Anyway.
What's the subject that you guys are?
Well, today we read life is a, what was it here? The
Paradox.
Existence is reality and life is shadow.
Yeah. Existence is substance. Yeah. And life is shadow. Yeah.
Shadow of the seventh shadow.
Yeah. So it begins with the section.
Yeah, I remember
begins
that.
With some spiritual paradox, which just is a little bit about that, about how, you know, what we say is real here. Baba says, God whom we do not see, we say is real, and the world which we do see, we say is unreal. What exists for us does not really exist, and what does not exist for us really exists. So we must lose ourselves in order to find ourselves. Thus, loss is itself gain, and we must die to self to live in God, and so on.
Yeah, I learned.
I'm reminded of something from Darwin about that. It kind of reminds me of that subject, which is that, you know, there were some of us that used to kind of take care of Darwin, and we would be up there at the house in Little River, kind of milling around. And from time to time, Darwin would go into a real state of absorption in Baba, I would say. You could see he went into a very deep state, so we would all kind of quiet down while this spell came over him. But on one occasion, I was sitting in the kitchen, and he went into, we were sitting there in the kitchen, and he went into one of those states. And I looked over at him, I said, Darwin, what are you doing in there? And he looked at me kind of laughing, and he said, I'm trying to dissolve all standpoints. Here, I'm trying to dissolve all standpoints. And And my thing is, when you dissolve all standpoints, you become existence. As long as you have a standpoint, you're in life. You're one's, you're there, and there's you and other. But when you dissolve the standpoints, you disappear into existence.
Did you tell him what about a sitting point?
What's that?
Did you tell him what about a sitting point?
A sitting point?
Well, he was sitting down.
As opposed to standpoint.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, I got it. But anyway, I thought, that it's that in early childhood, we didn't really have much of a standpoint. And for a time, we were in existence. But then we developed the standpoint, and I'm me, and those people are them. And now, before you know it, you're into life.
Yeah, the first 7 years of life. Baba said that children are children. They're like angels.
Yeah, they're in existence for a while,
yeah.
And then they fall into life. What did Sri Aurobindo said? Education is the slow and gradual and methodical strangulation of the soul.
Yeah.
Education. Anyway.
So when a child throws a tantrum because they didn't get a toy or a treat, is that not a standpoint? Is that more like a spontaneous?
Yeah. It's more superficial.
Yeah.
They're not saying, "Hey, nobody in this household pays me any attention." They haven't got that mentality yet.
There's a bunch of steps.
Yeah.
The 7-year-old, when he found
regarding what you said about Darwin trying to get rid of all standpoints, one of the things that Baba says here is that we must lose ourselves in order to find ourselves, thus loss is gain. And I can look back on my life and see that the periods of my life where I lost the most or suffered the most have also been those periods that I've drawn me closer to Baba. And have significantly changed my relationship to Baba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of sanskars get burned up when you go through hard times.
Yes.
A lot of the separation gets hopefully burned up if you don't wind up being resentful.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that may happen is the sanskaras that get burned up and those attachments are redirected to Baba.
Yeah.
And so the energy and the form that we put into those attachments become internalized, and our inner form of Baba, our inner relation to Baba becomes larger because we transfer those things that we're losing in the world to him, and that enlarges our understanding of him, and he kind of grows within us.
Isn't that kind of what's happening globally?
You mean today?
Oh yeah.
We've lost a lot of our privileges, most privileges of travel, of socializing, of restaurants, parties, you name it. There is no option but to turn around and look inward.
And that looking inward is precipitating what's going to happen. That's my feeling. Like today with Reverend Al Sharpton giving the eulogy, or part of the eulogy, and mentioning August 28th, that there will be tens of thousands of people marching to Washington. I bet you there'll be 2 million. Only because of this unifying thing.
And it's interesting that it's going to be on Kitty's birthday.
Ooh.
August 28th. He said they'll all be marching to Washington.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. So, all this kind of demonstration is often what changes things in this country. Probably the only thing that causes things to change.
Yep.
The women's voting, civil rights, Vietnam War. So when people got on the ground in large numbers.
Yeah.
The politicians have to worry a little bit.
I think people are probably unconsciously protesting the way things were, period. Not just this current issue, but
Oh, sure. Yeah.
it's just this accumulated amount of things people have had to put up with.
And things are being amplified for the reasons you said, Fairstay, because people are losing what you said are privileges. What things that they have things they're used to doing are currently no longer available, and so there's this added amplification of their frustration.
Most of which they don't need anyway.
Yeah. And so, I think I asked Jeff this question about, is this pandemic going to force people to look more inward? And if I'm not mistaken, Jeff, you mentioned that, we're in a privileged situation where we can afford to do so, but there may be many people who are not in a position to, or that have the luxury of having the time and space in order to look inwardly. I don't really know if that's true, but
yeah.
Or and maybe having the preparation to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even knowing how.
Having a context for what, or an awareness of what's even another possibility.
Yeah.
It's in the expression of all those things that inward direction will that outward expression will turn inward because of the outward expression that occurs. Even if one is not really involved in it or just looking at it. And most of us will be looking at this outward expression of people saying, we have to change. And we're marching because of that. And my only concern is that it doesn't go violent. But if it does, it does.
Yeah.
No control over that.
I think it's also interesting that Baba first came to the West during the Depression, the economic depression of the 1930s. And that's when suffering was at its height in America, in Europe. So, that tended to make the ground somewhat fertile for his arrival.
Yeah. Yeah, this
88 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 is the beginning of 1 again. Precedes 1 again.
I once asked this Fondiar, I said, most of us grew up and one of the values that we inherited in our upbringing was to make the world a better place. To leave the world, make the world a better place. And he said, he surprised everybody because there were a lot of people there. He said, that is not the purpose. Not that the world becomes a better place. The purpose is that people turn to God. In other words, the purpose isn't the good life. The purpose is to turn within, and what's going to get us to turn within? It's sometimes very hard to tell what will cause us to do that. Not necessarily prosperity. That's it would be nice if we could have prosperity. Remember what Bob Mansara used to describe?
It's 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Mansara used to describe something that Baba said to her, where Baba said, during the Kali Yuga, I don't know if you can see this, but maybe you remember this, Richie. During the Kali Yuga, this much effort, I got to get up there, this much effort gives you this much progress.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting my arms all the way. This much effort gives you this much progress.
Yeah.
In the golden age, this much progress, my arms are spread out, gives you just this much progress.
Yeah.
This much effort.
What's that?
This much effort.
Yeah, effort.
gives you this little bit of progress.
Yeah. So, yeah. So the good life doesn't necessarily yield spiritual growth. These hard times,
Right.
if we can stay, live according to loving values, we have a chance to grow spiritually.
Yeah. I see Julie has joined us.
Hey, Julie Engsberg?
I don't know. She's
Rodriguez?
muted. Julie, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, it
okay.
is Julie.
Yeah.
Really just enjoying having more connection during this time and with Baba and his lovers. So I'm here not so much to talk, but just to hang in with you.
Oh, good. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we're all at a bar here having a great time. I don't know what you're doing.
All right, I better fly out there pretty soon.
Yeah. Julie, are you in Arizona these days?
I'm in Arizona, yeah, and I took a guess that I could come out in early August and maybe the center would be opened. So we'll see if that actually happens.
Well, that would
Yeah.
be nice, but I have to say, it seems like the number of cases is on the uprise again here around Merle.
Is it? Yeah, that's what we're expecting anyway. But I made that reservation in a hopeful moment.
Great.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, the fact that they took your reservations is encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah. Just as long as you bring your own plates and silverware and your bedding.
Okay, well,
And
that's
pots and pans.
easily done.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness.
So I'm going to end the meeting and end the recording, but if anyone who feels a little hesitant about speaking while the recording is going on, if they want to share something after I end the recording of it, feel free to stick around and do so. So I'm just going to go ahead and say Jai Baba to say goodbye to the recording part of it.
Yeah.